I'm Maria Titizian.
And I'm Rubina Margosian, and this is the Week in Review.
Every week we bring you the stories shaping Armenia and the region.
From politics and policy to social issues and conflict, we break down the news and what it means for you.
This week in the news, a new investigation reveals alleged Kremlin efforts to prevent Nikol Pashinyan from securing victory in upcoming parliamentary elections. Allegations emerge that Narek Karapetyan, head of the Strong Armenia party list, holds Russian citizenship. A video surfaces showing masked gunmen threatening the prime minister. And Andranik Tevanyan, second on Prosperous Armenia's electoral list, is charged with high treason and espionage. These stories and more in our weekly roundup of the news.
Armenia's parliamentary election campaign has entered an increasingly volatile and chaotic phase, marked by conspiracy theories, espionage charges, inflammatory rhetoric, and growing tensions. As fear-driven narratives and erratic behavior dominate the campaign trail, the country's already polarized political atmosphere feels like it's becoming more unstable.
A lot unstable.
Much more unstable, less professional in a way. It's becoming personal insults at this point rather than any social issues being discussed.
Nobody's talking about policy issues at this point. Today, not only today, last couple of days has been wild.
In addition to this, Armenia's anti-corruption committee continues to report cases of vote buying and other electoral violations, primarily linked to the Strong Armenia party, and all this new investigations underway with espionage charges, as we said, and whether or not certain people have Armenian citizenship. So, it's more like an action movie. It's a spy movie right at this point rather than an election campaign.
Well, it's never boring in Armenia. Let's put it that way, if you want.
A lot of what's fueling this is a publication by a Latvia-based Russian dissident outlet, The Insider, which this week published a lengthy report on what it described as the Kremlin's efforts to prevent incumbent Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's civil contract party from winning after he pursued closer ties with the European Union and the United States. The Insider claims to have identified who oversees the Armenian portfolio in the Russian presidential administration, which officers from the Foreign Intelligence Service, the GRU, which is the Russian Foreign Military Intelligence Agency, and the FSB, which is the Federal Security Service, were sent to Yerevan, and how Armenian opposition candidates are linked to Russia's intelligence agencies. One finding in particular made headlines in Armenia. The Insider reported, citing sources familiar with the billionaire's inner circle, that Nikol Karapetyan was apparently put under serious pressure and was forced to create Strong Armenia bloc as a counterweight to Pashinyan. Additionally, the report contains a leaked document of Karapetyan's Russian passport from 1999, where his workplace is indicated as the FSB, Russia's principal security agency, and the successor of the Soviet KGB. An Interior Ministry operative told The Insider that these markings are usually reserved for foreigners working under the organization's supervision or for confidential informants. Well, according to Daniel Ionisyan, he's the head of the Informed Citizens Union in Armenia, which includes the fact investigation platform FIB. It isn't necessarily clear what the document shows. He says while the document itself is real, its interpretation is up for debate, offering two main scenarios. It is entirely possible, he says, that Karapetyan was a secret informant or an operative of the FSB, but it is also highly common for wealthy businessmen, especially back in the 1990s Russia, to be formally or superficially registered as employees of the security agency. This was done primarily to obtain official FSB identification badges, credentials, which were used to avoid trouble, bypass bureaucratic hurdles, or gain competitive advantages in business. Karapetyan, currently under house arrests, dismissed the report, saying he's not an operative, but Pashinyan might be. Basically, that's what he insinuated. Pashinyan doubled down, describing Karapetyan as nothing more, nothing less than a Russian operative, and argued that the party Karapetyan founded amounts to an agent network.
In a related development, Armenian authorities said Narek Karapetyan, the nephew of Nikol Karapetyan, who's heading the Strong Armenia electoral list, is a Russian citizen and therefore ineligible to run for parliament. Again, for context, Armenia's constitution says you cannot have dual citizenship if you're running for office. I mean, the whole Samvel Karapetyan thing is ridiculous. And then today, I don't know if you saw, Rubina, Strong Armenia said, Samvel Karapetyan remains our candidate for prime minister. We will come to power. We will change the constitution so that he can become prime minister. This is the situation we're at. And so now, allegedly, they found evidence of Narek Karapetyan being a Russian citizen. Parliament Speaker Alen Simonyan had posted a document as proof, which Narek Karapetyan refuted, insisting that he is solely an Armenian citizen. Armenia's investigative committee opened a criminal case against Karapetyan on charges of concealing foreign citizenship, alleging that he submitted a false declaration stating he did not hold citizenship of another country. The news website Factor AM later reported that information concerning Karapetyan in Russia's state registry had been edited. According to a new extract obtained by the outlet, Karapetyan is now listed as an Armenian citizen rather than a Russian citizen. The change was reportedly made on the evening of May 20 after Alen Simonyan's initial post exposing Karapetyan as a Russian citizen. And of course, Russia's Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galuzhin said that Karapetyan has never had Russian citizenship. He also dismissed the insider report that you just talked about, Rubina, as an attempt to fuel spy mania against Russia.
In addition to all this, a video circulated online showing a group of masked and armed men speaking in the Artsakh dialect and threatening Prime Minister Pashinyan. This was the main event this week.
Yeah,
also.
well, I don't know. There were so many main events, but
the unidentified speaker accused Pashinyan of betraying the people of Artsakh and intending to hand Armenia over to Azerbaijan as well, warning that he would be held accountable. It was like more, you're a bitch and we know where you
where you live.
Well, yeah, where you're at and we will find you. Well, Pashinyan went off on the offensive during a campaign event. It's like as soon as this video was posted, he was on the campaign trail. He accused the individuals of abandoning Armenian soldiers during the war, and this we're assuming because they were speaking in the Artsakh dialect. He challenged them to reveal their identities publicly and warned that authorities would identify everyone involved. Pashinyan also claimed the group was linked to supporters of former President Robert Kocharian and Serge Sarkisyan, as well as opposition figures Samvel Karapetyan and Gagik Tsarukyan. And this new thing that the ruling party is doing, describing the opposition as a three-headed dragon, kind of bringing all the opposition forces together as part of the same body with three heads. Well, Armenia's investigative committee later announced the launch of a criminal case describing the video as containing credible assassination threat against the prime minister connected to his political activities. Authorities said the investigation involves allegations related to the preparation for murder by a group, illegal arms trafficking, and computer sabotage. Pashinyan later stated that investigators had already tentatively identified several individuals seen in the video, though he stressed that the information remains preliminary and unconfirmed.
But then this morning, during his press conference, he said that these individuals that they have identified more or less, he was kind of sketchy about it, and that they have not been in Armenia since 2024.
Well, we'll see what the
investigation reveals. Yeah, but it was really chilling to see that video. I don't remember having that kind of experience in Armenia before. The masked gunmen, they're holding guns, and then behind them there's a picture of a hand with a Kalashnikov and the letter
kind of reminiscent of an Asala thing, which wasn't exactly...
And French subtitles. Which, again, just...
Well, in connection to this and a lot of leaked documents from the insider as well, where they had identified a lot of Russian campaigns against Armenia with false flagged as being French or even attributed to the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. And Daniel Ionisian from FIP and the Informed Citizens Union, he was saying that this video
is reminiscent
and most likely is a false flag campaign.
Well, speaking of FIP, a new investigation by the fact-checking organization details what it describes as a coordinated Kremlin-linked disinformation campaign aimed at influencing Armenia's elections and undermining support for Pashinyan. According to leaked documents, the operation relied on fake videos, bot networks, clone media websites, and coordinated messaging designed to deepen public distrust, amplify anti-Western narratives, and portray Armenia's growing ties with Europe as a threat to national security. Among the narratives promoted online were claims that Armenia could become another Ukraine, which is something that
Putin himself said.
Last week we reported on that NATO forces would enter the country after the elections, that hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis would soon relocate to Armenia. I'm going to come back to this in a minute.
It's Karapetyan's main tagline
I know.
these
What
days.
did we see today, Rubina? If you don't go to vote, then 300,000 Azerbaijanis will. Unbelievable. Anyway, coming back to the FIP investigation, the investigation also describes fake reports alleging that Pashinyan's family had purchased luxury properties in Marseille and Canada, as well as AI-generated videos accusing Armenian authorities of planning election fraud and repression. This has also been, trying to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the elections. Researchers say the campaign used doppelganger websites imitating legitimate outlets such as France 24 to spread fabricated stories, including claims that France, this is the best, was secretly transferring nuclear waste to Armenia. According to the report, the operation resembles broader pro-Kremlin influence campaigns previously documented in Moldova and across Europe, and may represent one of the largest disinformation efforts targeting Armenia in recent years.
Part of the same
yes, espionage
charges.
Treachery.
An investigation was launched against Andranik Tevanyan, leader of the Mother Armenia Party, and second on Gagik Zarukyan's parliamentary election list for high treason and espionage. As we're recording, we know that Tevanyan's house has been searched. We don't have information whether or not he's been arrested or they have been charged.
Or formally charged.
Formally charged. Well, the investigative committee alleges that Tevanyan was recruited by foreign intelligence services in 2024 in exchange for 622,000 US dollars and transferred classified information about a closed-door National Assembly session in Armenia to a representative of the Russian Caucasus Geopolitical Center, whom authorities described as linked to foreign intelligence services. I like this when they say, a foreign intelligence service. They never name a country, but then they say these documents were translated in Russian and were transferred to a Russian Caucasus Geopolitical Center. So, Tevanyan rejected the accusation in a video statement, arguing that he could not have committed the alleged offense because he relinquished his parliamentary mandate in 2023 and later participated in Yerevan City Council elections. So just a reminder, in 2021, he was elected into parliament as part of the Armenia Alliance. So, and then he
moved to the Prosperous Armenia party. And he also has his own party.
Yes. Well, the investigative committee responded saying that they weren't necessarily saying he was there. They're saying he acquired the information and passed it on.
In other interesting news, I'm going to try not to express my opinion, but here we go. The Armenian government is seeking to nationalize Ararat Cement. This is the country's largest cement producer factory owned by opposition figure and business tycoon Gagik Zarukyan, head of the Prosperous Armenia party. Armenia's Prosecutor General's office opened a criminal case over alleged violations tied to the company's 2002 privatization. This is going back quarter of a century. The announcement followed Prime Minister Pashinyan's May 20 statement that the plant would soon return to state control and be placed under temporary administration, leading us to believe that he knew that there was a case that was going to be opened pretty soon in the middle of the campaign. Prosecutors say they reviewed the 2002 privatization process and submitted findings to the Anti-Corruption Committee on May 5. Criminal proceedings were launched 2 days later on charges including abuse of official authority and large-scale money laundering. According to the prosecutor, the government first sought to privatize Ararat Cement through a tender in 2001. A Swiss company at the time won the bid, but later withdrew after rejecting the investment program without explanation. In 2002, the government instead sold more than 317,000 state-owned shares directly to a Belgian company called Roberto for 200,000 US dollars. Prosecutors say Roberto's founders were 3 Armenian citizens whose combined capital was worth less than 19,000 euros at the time, and yet they purchased it for $200,000. Investigators also highlighted ties between Roberto and Zarukyan's family circle. 6 months after the sale, Roberto conveniently appointed Zarukyan as the company's sole manager without term limits. A Brussels court began liquidating Roberto in 2003, and with the process concluding in 2008. Prosecutors say they have also advised the Armenian government to consider appointing a temporary manager at Ararat Cement while the investigation continues. Last summer, as a reminder, Armenian authorities started the nationalization process of the electric networks of Armenia. This is owned by Samvel Karapetyan's family.
And an Artsakh Armenian activist, Artur Osipyan, was detained earlier this week following a confrontation with Pashinyan during a campaign event. This was in Yerevan. Osipyan is now on a hunger strike. According to investigators, Osipyan made Facebook posts on March 22 calling for violence against Pashinyan for political reasons. Authorities also alleged that on May 18 he attempted to disrupt a civil contract campaign event after making a threatening Facebook post. In the post, Osipyan said that he could pluck out Pashinyan's feathers, an Armenian expression meaning crushing someone or humiliating someone. Prosecutors also accused him of disrupting public order through swearing and indecent language. During the confrontation, Osipyan questioned Pashinyan's position that Artsakh's fate had long been predetermined within Azerbaijan because no negotiation documents guaranteed independence for Nagorno-Karabakh. He also accused Armenian authorities of sending money to corrupt elites in Artsakh rather than ordinary residents and criticized Pashinyan for supporting former Artsakh leader Narek Karapetyan during disputed elections. While the exchange was heated, Osipyan is not heard insulting Pashinyan in the available video footage. Eventually, Pashinyan lost his temper and accused former Artsakh elites of looting and declared that the pseudo-elites of Karabakh led by Rob Serge and Galugatsi Samo, this is what they call Samvel Karapetyan, everyone from the civil contract party, because he made his fortune and he lived in the town of Kaluga in Russia, would be uprooted from Armenia. He also questioned why Artsakh Armenian leaders and activists had survived the war while Armenian soldiers died. The Aganates observation mission expressed deep concern over rising hate speech and intolerance in political discourse during the campaign, pointing specifically to the confrontation between Osipyan and Pashinyan and its aftermath. The group said the criminal prosecution against Osipyan appeared unfounded and illegal. According to Aganates, although Osipyan's statements included harsh political criticism, at times inappropriate rhetoric, they remained within the bounds of political speech. The organization also said Pashinyan's responses were equally harsh, describing the confrontation as a mutual emotional and political clash. Aganates additionally described Pashinyan's remarks towards forcibly displaced Artsakh Armenians as unacceptable and warned they risk deepening polarization. More than a dozen other civil society organizations also condemned what they described as the obvious illegal, unfounded, and politically motivated prosecution and detention of Osipyan, demanding his immediate release and the termination of criminal proceedings against him.
In a separate development, a man detained on accusations of removing campaign posters committed suicide at a psychiatric institution after being taken into custody, according to Armenia's investigative committee. The committee said it had opened a criminal case against Armen Hovanesyan on charges of obstructing election campaigning or coercing participation or non-participation in campaigning, classifying the removal of the posters as interference with campaign activities. Hovanesyan was detained and transferred to a detention facility where officers observed signs of mental instability. This is according to their official statement. On the morning of May 16, prompting them to call an ambulance. Following an examination, he was transferred to a mental health center under police escort. Later that day, he sadly, tragically hung himself at the psychiatric facility. Human rights lawyers and civil society representatives criticized the authorities' handling of the case, arguing that pretrial detention was a disproportionate measure for tearing down election posters. And we've talked about this on end, right? About this whole pretrial detention. Some other guy, who I saw on Facebook, had videoed himself tearing down campaign posters because they were on a monument or something. That guy posts himself doing it and there's no recourse. And then this guy, they just seem to be throwing everybody in jail at the moment.
Well, there's also the case of that another confrontation from this week with the sister of a soldier who, a high-ranking soldier who has been missing in action since the war from Hadrut. She also confronted Pashinyan regarding this, and it did also get very unpleasantly heated, unnecessarily
necessarily.
defensive.
Yeah.
So yes, things are becoming.
I think the fact that we haven't really addressed a lot of the underlying issues in our society, it's all coming to the surface now. This woman, when you watch the footage, she was there. She was already very highly agitated when she confronted Pashinyan. Understandably so. She has a brother who's been missing, and she was questioning the number of MIAs. And Pashinyan at first is very calm, and then he loses control. She walks away. He tries to grab her. So it becomes this whole very unpleasant situation that we're seeing over and over again. A lot of the candidates are being confronted. We're just not seeing all of them, right?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the times with other campaigns, you don't have that much exposure, or
Yeah, that's right.
It is a tense time, and it is a very telling time for our society and our politicians in a way, because this is where the true emotional maturity, the capacity for self-control, and everything shows.
Yep.
Especially the incumbent needs to have a little bit more decorum and self-control, but the quality of conversation and what we're hearing back and forth is unacceptable.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well,
it is. And we have another 2 weeks left.
And then post-election.
And then post-election. There you go.
Postpartum. Sorry. Well, in other news, Armenia and Lithuania elevated their bilateral relations to strategic partnership this week, with the foreign ministers of the two countries signing a joint declaration in Yerevan, coinciding with the 35th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. The declaration outlines cooperation across four main areas: political dialogue, countering hybrid threats, and strengthening democratic resilience, economy and energy, and people-to-people contacts.
Azerbaijan's ambassador to Ankara, Rashat Mamadov, stated in an interview this week that the Armenia-Turkey border would open after Armenia's June elections and following constitutional amendments in Armenia. Mamadov also said Azerbaijani and Turkish officials remained in close coordination and were moving forward step by step based on a shared understanding of the process. He reiterated Baku's claim that Armenia's constitution contained territorial claims against Azerbaijan and said a referendum to remove them would take place after the June 7 elections. This guy has a lot of information, it seems. Well, according to the diplomat, once those claims are removed, the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement initialed in the United States would be formally signed, after which both the Armenia-Turkey and Armenia-Azerbaijan borders would open. While it is widely understood that Ankara has linked normalization with Armenia to progress in Armenia-Azerbaijan relations, the Azerbaijani ambassador's remarks drew criticism in Turkey. Gonul Tol of the Middle East Institute wrote that she had increasingly heard Turkish diplomats complain about Azerbaijan attempting to dictate terms to Ankara, adding that an Azerbaijani ambassador publicly declaring when and under what conditions the Turkey-Armenia border will open takes things to a whole new level. And retired Turkish diplomat Mehmet Fatih Ceylan also criticized the comments, calling them at the very least unfortunate and a failure to know one's place. In a social media post, he stressed that Turkey is sovereign in its decisions and that neither Baku nor Yerevan can be allowed to influence these decisions or publicly comment on this matter.
And on the matter of Armenia and Turkish water commissions met in Yerevan for the first time to discuss the joint use of the Ahurian and Arax rivers. Armenia's water committee said several agreements were reached during the meeting, did not elaborate on what those agreements
is ever elaborated on.
entailed.
The Eurasian Economic Union is expected to discuss Armenia's membership in the bloc amid Yerevan's deepening ties with the EU and its membership to the EU, its aspirations for that. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk again warned Armenia about the potential consequences of closer alignment with the EU. He said Armenia was seeking to adopt EU standards while also wanting to remain in the Eurasian Economic Union and continue benefiting from the bloc's economic preferences. Overchuk said it would be better for Armenia to decide its course sooner, both for itself and for its allies in the Union. Isn't he the one who also said that Armenia should decide which chair it wants to sit in?
Yeah, it cannot sit
on both chairs, yeah. Well, according to Overchuk, the issue will be discussed by EA-EU leaders during the upcoming meeting in Astana. This is going to be held on May 29. He said Russia does not want Armenia to leave the bloc, wants the country to continue prospering, but said that problems linked to Armenia's rapprochement with the EU were already emerging. Pashinyan Pashinyan will not attend that meeting because of the campaign. It'll be, a few days before the end of the campaign. Deputy Prime Minister Meher Grigoryan will participate in his stead. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova criticized Pashinyan's decision to skip the upcoming Eurasian Economic Union summit, saying that while absences from meetings occasionally happen, Pashinyan's non-participation was becoming what she said was systematic. She also said that for the union itself, there is no tragedy in this. The only question concerns Armenia itself.
And for the first time, Armenia has exported Armenia-made weapons worth millions of dollars. High-tech industry minister Nikol Pashinyan announced this week. Maybe this news should have been in the election digest part in the beginning, because his announcement came in retaliation to opposition accusations saying what has Armenia done or what new industries have come. But however, it's here. Karapetyan described it as a historic milestone, noting that 3 Armenian companies exported weapons to 2 countries, overcoming significant logistical challenges.
And again, not a lot of details, as usual.
Not a lot of details.
Sometimes the Soviet Union has not collapsed in Armenia. I mean, it's interesting because on May 28th, we're going to be having, is it a parade?
A non-parade parade.
A non-parade non-military parade. Yes, a showcasing of Armenia's military hardware.
Well, we'll find out more then.
We'll find out on the day. Well, as always, we talk about the articles that we published this week, and today we just published a Who's Who. We've been doing these election primers. We did one on what the parties are saying about foreign policy and security, another one about their positions on domestic issues, and today we just did sort of like a Who's Who of the 19 political forces that are taking part, ranging from ruling and opposition to newly formed movements. So it's a concise guide if you're interested to know how the crowded political landscape is looking.
And also it has to be said, this week was about the elections.
Yeah.
It was about
I have a lot more to say, but containing myself.
Very prominent part of the election campaign that we're seeing fear-mongering.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exhausting. It's almost like we're in the middle of a psychological warfare. But yeah. Another interesting piece, Sosi Tatikian does these very highly descriptive, very well-researched pieces. And this one was, for me, very, very educational.
Absolutely.
It's called The Enclave Issue Between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And again, as the campaign is intensifying, the issue of Soviet-era enclaves between Armenia and Azerbaijan has reemerged as a very sensitive political and security question. So Tatikian explores their historical origins, the legal status, international parallels, and possible scenarios being discussed within the peace process, because Azerbaijan has several enclaves that are on Armenian territory. Armenia has Arzavashan, on Azerbaijani territory. And I think it was today, Rubina, somebody yelled out to Pashinyan, so did you hand over Dikranashan, which is one of the Azerbaijani enclaves? So it's an ongoing...
And usually from Sheila Pailan we have her column, but this time we did publish a separate piece, an op-ed. It's called Politics of Silence, Artsakh Memory and Armenian Democracy. She looks at the debates over peace, memory, and democracy as Armenia's parliamentary elections are approaching, and how they're colliding amid rising polarization and the latest assassination threats, the masked man. She argues that suppressing public grief and demands for justice over Artsakh risks eroding civic trust and weakening the democratic resilience Armenia seeks to preserve.
And we have a new piece by Garen Jansizyan. It's called Strike Against the Sweatshop, Migrant Workers in Ichevan. It was almost surreal when we saw the footage, right, of hundreds of Indian migrant workers protesting very unhealthy conditions at textile factory in Ichevan. So Garen went there the very next day. He went to Ichevan to see what was happening. He wasn't allowed onto the premises of the factory. Security wouldn't allow him, but he was able to speak to a number of Indian migrant workers, and they described abusive working conditions, unpaid wages, rising production quotas. And he writes that their protest exposes deeper problems in Armenia's labor system, just generally, where weak protections leave migrant workers vulnerable to exploitation, surveillance, and coercion. I mean, they did a strike earlier about the fact that their passports were taken away. And the owner of the company, Grand Textile, is a Russian citizen, a Russian national, and the management were Armenians, but now they're Russians as well. So not that it matters. I mean, it's still within Armenia's laws. So this is a problem for sure.
And we've been publishing more Newswatch pieces, and because just recently the EU presented Armenia's visa liberalization progress report, we do have Newswatch piece on it by Hranush Dermoyan. It basically outlines what is going according to plan, what we're behind on, what needs to be done, and how the process will move forward. So
yeah,
there's more
it's going to take
information.
several years, but since this was the first progress report,
We reported on the
we
progress.
reported on it.
And Maria, this week we published just today a new episode of Vaityev Sakain Aino Amen Naiv. It's an Armenian language podcast that Vigen Galistyan does. This time it's an interesting subject and very close to my heart because people initiating it are
Your relatives.
my relatives.
So
No
little-
nepotism though.
Total nepotism.
Vigen invited the guest without my knowledge.
Who's your brother-in-law?
Who's my brother-in-law. and
Full
they're doing-
disclosure. That's
Full-
fine. I mean, if these people are doing great work, why shouldn't we highlight them? It's not your fault that he's your brother-in-law.
It's not my fault that he's doing great work.
Exactly.
They started an organization, a very interesting one that will be based in Yerevan in Armenia. And it's about, well, listen to the podcast, hopefully, and find out.
Okay.
But it's about preserving the legacy of Armenian artists in the diaspora, across the diaspora, thinkers, collections that are disappearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they're not
and-
housed anywhere.
They're not housed. They're not necessarily inherited by anyone. A lot of the time, they just like are thrown away from warehouses after the artists pass. Sometimes they have people who can take care of these legacies, but these people are not equipped with
they
the
don't know how to
knowledge and the
preserve them.
preservation.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is to preserve, collect, bring them to Armenia, not to keep them under lock and key here in a basement here, but to also
Showcase
make
them.
showcase them
Yeah.
around Armenia, around globe, in other places, and also complete the history of Armenian diasporan arts and intellectual heritage, because there are a lot of parts that are missing because these people are being forgotten, these legacies are being lost. Okay, so I'm doing the whole podcast.
You are doing the whole podcast, the whole nepotism thing.
I am. Well, I'm excited about the project.
It's a great project, and definitely listen to it if you understand Armenian. Well, that's the kind of week it's been here in Armenia. We are trying to preserve our sanity as we head into the second last week of the election campaign. And just as a reminder, we will be publishing our final poll June 3 or 4, we're hoping. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for listening. Have a safe and peaceful weekend, and we'll be back again next week.